What if I told you there's a silent thief lurking in the shadows of your life? A force so subtle, so cunning, that it steals from you without ever making a sound. Not in a dramatic, earth-shattering moment, but in the quiet surrender of everyday life. One day you are strong, engaged, alive with purpose. The next you look in the mirror and see a version of yourself that has faded into the background. Not because time betrayed you, not because aging is an unavoidable curse, but because somewhere along the way you stopped fighting for yourself. The Buddha once said, "You only lose what you cling to," and that is the truth we must face. The suffering of old age is not about wrinkles or slowing limbs. It is about the weight of attachment, the trap of stagnation, and the slow erosion of meaning. But here's the secret no one tells you. You are not powerless against it. Old age is not the end. It is the threshold of something greater, a time of wisdom, strength, and transformation, if you choose it. So I ask you, will you slip away into irrelevance, or will you rise, sharper, wiser, more alive than ever before? Because the truth is, aging does not diminish you, only inaction does. And today you decide whether you will fade or awaken. The silent erosion. Why people disappear. At first it happens in the smallest ways. You stop challenging yourself. You settle into predictable routines. You convince yourself that rest is what you've earned, and growth is for the younger ones. But what is rest if not a slow surrender? What is comfort if not the beginning of decay? Think of a river. As long as it moves, it stays clean, vibrant, and full of life. But the moment it stops flowing, it becomes stagnant, murky, lifeless. The same is true of the mind, the spirit, and the soul. Buddhist philosophy teaches us that life is impermanence. Everything is always changing. But the moment we resist that change, when we hold on to the illusion of stability, that's when suffering begins. People do not fade because of years on a calendar. They fade because they let go of curiosity, of engagement, of the very fire that once fueled them. It starts with the little things, the books left unread, the ideas left unexplored, the conversations that no longer ignite passion. The gradual slipping away from purpose happens so subtly that you don't even notice. One day, you wake up and realize you haven't been excited about anything in years, that you haven't learned something new, haven't embraced a challenge, haven't truly lived. Let me tell you a story. There was once a retired professor, a man who had spent his life immersed in academia, shaping young minds, debating ideas, and constantly pushing the limits of knowledge. When he retired, he told himself he had earned his rest. No more deadlines, no more pressure, no more need to keep up with the fast-changing world. At first, he enjoyed the newfound freedom, long mornings, unhurried afternoons, the absence of responsibility. But something began to shift. His books gathered dust. His once lively discussions with former colleagues became occasional, then rare, then non-existent. He stopped reading the latest research, stopped writing, stopped thinking critically. Slowly, his mind dulled. Conversations became repetitive, his insights stale. The fire that had once burned so brightly within him had dimmed into mere embers. One evening, he sat alone in his study, staring at the untouched pages of a book he had meant to read. He realized, with a pang of regret, that he was disappearing, not physically, but mentally, spiritually. He was fading into irrelevance, not because he was old, but because he had stopped engaging with life. Now contrast that with the story of another man, a Buddhist monk in his late 80s. Every morning, he woke before the sun, meditated, read, taught his students, and engaged in deep discussions. He continued learning, questioning, evolving. His body had aged, yes, but his spirit remained as sharp as ever. Why? because he never stopped moving, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. He understood that life does not stop simply because the years advance. It stops only when you let it. This is the fundamental truth. Age does not strip you of vitality. Disengagement does. The moment you stop seeking, stop questioning, stop pushing the boundaries of your mind and spirit, that is when you begin to disappear. So ask yourself, are you still flowing, or have you begun to stagnate? Are you still reaching for knowledge, for wisdom, for purpose? Or have you settled into a routine so predictable that life itself has become a passive experience? The good news, it's never too late to start again. The river can always find its course. You just have to be willing to move. The dangerous illusion of retirement. They tell you that retirement is a reward, a long-awaited rest after years of toil. But ask yourself, rest from what? From learning, from growing, from contributing to the world around you. If you believe that life was meant to be endured until you reach some finish line of leisure, you have been misled. In Buddhist teachings, we are reminded that life itself is the journey. There is no destination where you suddenly become free from responsibility, because the moment you stop carrying purpose, you start carrying regret. For a moment, picture an old warrior. He has spent decades sharpening his blade, training his body, and mastering his craft. Then one day, he is told to put his sword away, to sit idly by while others take his place. At first, it feels like relief. Finally, he can rest. But as the days turn into weeks, and the weeks into months, something inside him withers. His muscles weaken, his instincts dull, and worse, his spirit, once fierce and unbreakable, begins to fade, not because he is old, but because he has stopped. This is the trap of retirement. The Zen master Shunryu Suzuki once said, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few." And that is the danger of stopping. When we stop learning, stop striving, stop engaging, we stop seeing possibility. We see only what is behind us, never what is ahead. Consider the story of Masako, an 82-year-old woman from Japan. For decades, she worked as a school teacher, waking up each morning with purpose, eager to share knowledge with her students. When she retired, she expected to feel fulfilled, to finally relax and enjoy her golden years. But within months, she felt lost. The silence in her home was deafening. She no longer had students to challenge her, no lessons to prepare, no reason to wake up with anticipation. Then one day, she made a choice. Instead of fading into the background, she began taking university courses, studying philosophy, writing essays, engaging in deep discussions with young minds. She found a new purpose, not as a teacher, but as a lifelong student. And in doing so, she discovered a powerful truth. Purpose is not given to us. It is something we choose every single day. Look at the great masters, the Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, wise monks and philosophers. They do not retire from wisdom, from teaching, from engaging with the world. And because of that, they remain timeless. Their bodies may age, but their spirits remain sharp, vibrant, and alive. This is the path, not one of passive waiting, but of active becoming. Retirement should not be an exit. It should be a transformation, a shift from one purpose to another, from one form of contribution to a new one. Because the moment you stop contributing to life, life stops responding to you. So what will you choose? Will you surrender to the illusion of retirement, letting the days pass in quiet stagnation? Or will you step forward with wisdom in your hands and fire in your soul, ready to embrace the next chapter with the same hunger, the same curiosity, same passion that brought you this far? The world does not need you to disappear. It needs you to awaken. The power of keeping strong company. Another great illusion of aging is the belief that one must spend their later years in quiet solitude. There is beauty in stillness, but there is danger in isolation. Who surrounds you in these years? Are they people who uplift you, challenge you, push you to grow? Or are they people who have surrendered, who no longer seek wisdom, who no longer believe they have anything left to learn? The Buddha taught the importance of Sangha, a community of seekers. In his words, a good companion is the whole of the spiritual life. Because the people around you shape your thoughts, your energy, and your destiny. A mind that ceases to be challenged will decay. A spirit that is not lifted will sink. And if you surround yourself with people who have abandoned their own growth, they will quietly lead you to abandon yours as well. There is a story of an elderly man named Haruki, a former scholar who had spent his life immersed in learning and debate. In his younger years, he surrounded himself with thinkers, seekers, and people who challenged his ideas. But as time passed, many of his peers retired into the comforts of routine. Conversations grew stale, predictable, and eventually, Haruki found himself in a circle where no one questioned, no one explored, no one reached for more. At first, he didn't notice the change within himself, but then a chance encounter shifted his perspective. One evening, at a local tea house, he met a young philosophy student. Their conversation was electric, full of questions, contradictions, and new perspectives. Haruki felt a spark reignite within him, something that had been dormant for too long. That night, he reflected on his surroundings. He realized he had allowed himself to drift into an environment of complacency. The wisdom he once wielded had dulled, not because of age, but because he had stopped sharpening it. Determined to change, he sought out new discussions, new minds, new challenges. He engaged with younger generations, attended lectures, and rekindled his curiosity. And something remarkable happened. His spirit lifted, his thought sharpened, and his energy returned. This is the power of who you allow into your life. Energy is contagious. Mindsets spread like wildfire. Surround yourself with those who still seek, who still hunger for wisdom, and you too will remain vibrant. But settle into circles of stagnation, and you will slowly, inevitably, become stagnant yourself. Think of a candle placed among other flames. If the flames are strong, the candle will continue to burn brightly. But if surrounded by dying embers, its light will dim until it is indistinguishable from the fading glow around it. Who are the flames in your life? Who challenges you to think, to grow, to keep reaching? And just as importantly, whose fire have you allowed to fade? You are not meant to disappear into the quiet shadows of old age. You are meant to remain engaged, to keep questioning, to keep seeking. And the people you choose to walk this journey with will determine whether you remain a roaring fire or a quiet flickering ember, waiting to be extinguished. Choose wisely. The true secret of staying alive, finding meaning. If there is one thing more dangerous than slowing down, more destructive than a stagnant routine, it is this: the loss of meaning. Buddhist teachings tell us that suffering is not caused by age, but by clinging to an identity that no longer serves us. The past is gone, but so is the belief that you are done, that your work is complete. Imagine a painter who, for decades, created masterpieces that inspired generations. He lived with purpose, waking up each day, eager to capture the beauty of the world on his canvas. But one day, his hands trembled, his vision blurred, and he convinced himself that his days as an artist were over. He packed away his brushes, turned away from his easel, and sat in silence. Weeks passed, then months. The once vibrant colors of his world faded into dull shades of gray, not because he had lost his talent, but because he had lost his purpose. One evening, his granddaughter visited. She brought him a set of pastels, and a small sketchbook. "You don't have to paint like before," she said, "but you can still create." At first he resisted. The thought of struggling through imperfect lines was painful, but as he slowly picked up the pastel, something shifted. He began to sketch, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. He no longer painted grand murals, but he found joy in creating simple, delicate portraits. And in that moment, he understood purpose does not have to remain the same, but it must exist. It must evolve. This is where so many go wrong. They believe that because they are no longer who they once were, they no longer have something to offer. But meaning is not tied to a single identity. It is a living, breathing force that changes with us. A retired teacher may not stand before a classroom, but they can still guide, still mentor, still impart wisdom. A former athlete may no longer compete, but they can inspire, coach, and shape the next generation. The only true tragedy is in believing that you have nothing left to give. Think of the great Buddhist masters. They do not cease to teach simply because their bodies age. Their purpose transforms from leading large gatherings to offering quiet counsel, from traveling across the world to writing their wisdom down for future generations. Purpose is fluid. It is not something you lose. It is something you choose to reshape. There is an old Zen proverb, "When the student is ready, the teacher will appear." But here's something most people forget. Sometimes you are the teacher, and the world is waiting for what you have to share. The key to staying alive, truly alive, is to continue giving, in whatever way you can. A mind that still seeks, a heart that still shares, a soul that still creates. These are the signs of a life well lived, a spirit that refuses to fade. So ask yourself, what is your purpose now? Not yesterday's purpose, not the one society expects, but the one that fits the person you are today. Because as long as you have something to give, you are not done, you are still becoming. The path forward. How to age with strength and wisdom. So if old age is a trap, how do we escape it? Keep moving in every sense. A river that stops flowing becomes stagnant, lifeless, and murky. The same applies to the human spirit. Life is movement. And movement, whether physical, mental, or spiritual, is the antidote to decay. There was once a man named Joseph, a retired engineer who had spent his entire career solving complex problems. When he retired, he imagined his days would be filled with leisure, reading, watching television, and spending long afternoons on his porch. But after a few months, something shifted. The excitement he had once felt when tackling challenges was gone. He began to feel sluggish, both in body and mind. Then one day, his grandson handed him a book on coding and said, "Grandpa, let's build something together." At first, Joseph laughed. He was too old for that, wasn't he? But curiosity won over doubt. As he dove into this new world, he felt something awaken inside him. He wasn't just learning to code. He was proving to himself that growth never has to stop. It's simple. Engage in daily activity, mental, physical, and spiritual. Read something new. Learn a skill. Try a different kind of exercise. Walk in nature. Meditate. Challenge your brain. Move your body. Nourish your soul. Because stagnation is death, but motion is life. Stay amongst the living. Who you spend time with will either elevate you or pull you into stagnation. Picture two elderly men. One spends his days reminiscing about the past, surrounded by others who do the same. Their conversations are loops of nostalgia, a cycle of regret and what could have been. The other man, he spends his time with thinkers, dreamers and seekers, people who are still striving, still learning. One of these men is growing, and the other is fading. The difference, their company. The Buddha emphasized the power of Sangha, a community of like-minded seekers. He knew that the energy of those around us shapes our own. Surround yourself with people who challenge you, who push you forward, who inspire you. Avoid those who have surrendered to apathy, because their stagnation is contagious. If you want to stay alive, not just in body, but in mind and spirit, then stay connected to those who are also alive. Seek new friendships. Engage in meaningful conversations. Never stop being curious about the people around you, because the moment you disconnect from those who are still reaching, you stop reaching too. Embrace impermanence. Everything changes, everything, and fighting against that change is what creates suffering. There's an old story of a Zen master who had a beautiful teacup. One day, a student asked, "Master, aren't you afraid of breaking it?" The master smiled and replied, "The cup is already broken. This is the essence of impermanence. The past was never meant to be a home, only a lesson. If you cling to what was, you will never see what is or what could be. Let go of old identities. You are not just your career, your past achievements, or your former roles. Those things are a part of you, but they are not you. Every day is a chance to begin again. The question is, will you take it? Find your purpose and keep it alive. If you wake up without a reason to get out of bed, then you are not living. You are merely existing. An elderly woman named Maria once believed that her best years were behind her. She had raised her children, retired from teaching, and assumed that all that was left was to take it easy. But one day, she saw a group of struggling young students in her neighborhood and had an idea. She began tutoring them, sharing not just knowledge but also wisdom. Within months, she felt more alive than she had in years. Why? Because she had found a new purpose. Your purpose does not have to be the same as it was in your younger years. It can evolve, transform, and take new shapes. Teach, guide, share your wisdom, mentor someone, volunteer, create. There is always more to give, more to contribute, and the truth is, the world needs what you have to offer, so don't let it go to waste. Final words. Will you rise or fade? So now I ask you again, what will you do? Will you allow time to take you? Will you let your fire dim? Will you fade quietly into the background of your own existence, watching the days slip by like sand through your fingers? Or will you rise? Because the truth is, you are not just a number on a calendar. You are not past your prime. You are not finished. You are here. And as long as there is breath in your lungs, there is purpose in your being. The world still needs you, your wisdom, your stories, your presence. The younger generations need your guidance. Your community needs your insight. And more than anything, you need to continue becoming, continue learning, continue giving. You are not a fading ember. You are a fire yet to burn its brightest. So rise. Rise with wisdom, with purpose, with fire in your soul. Walk forward with strength, not as someone who has aged, but as someone who has awakened. And when the world looks at you, let them see not a person who has grown old, but a person who has refused to stop growing. This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter. And if this message resonated with you, if it stirred something deep within you, then take a moment, like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to this channel. Because this journey, this path of wisdom, strength, and purpose, is one we will continue to walk together. You are not alone, and you are not done. So rise, and let the world witness your awakening.